I found a military-grade GPS tracker hidden under the bumper of my car, but instead of panicking, I decided to mail it to a random address in Tokyo just to confuse whoever was watching me. I thought I was playing a clever game against a corporate rival or a jealous ex, but when the tracker landed in Japan, my phone did not ring. My 15-year-old daughter's burner phone did. And the voice I heard on the other end was not my wife, and it was not a competitor. It was the man my children had hired to kill me. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. I need you to tell me if you found out your entire life was a lie constructed by the people you loved most. Would you walk away, or would you burn it all to the ground? My name is Mark. I am 56 years old, and until last Tuesday, I believed I was the luckiest man in the state of Connecticut. I am an architect by trade, a builder by nature, and a provider by instinct. I spent 30 years building a firm from a basement operation into a regional powerhouse. I designed skylines. I restored historic landmarks. But the project I was most proud of, the only structure that truly mattered to me, was my family. I built our life with the same precision I applied to my blueprints. I constructed a world where my wife, Elena, would never have to worry about a mortgage, where my 17-year-old son, Chris, could drive a car safer than a tank, and where my 15-year-old daughter, Mia, could pursue her art without ever knowing the crushing weight of student loans. I was the foundation. They were the house. I thought the foundation was solid. I did not realize it was being eaten away by termites from the inside out. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were my late days. I usually stayed at the firm until 8 or 9 in the evening, reviewing site reports and approving budget adjustments. That evening, however, I left early. I had a headache that had been nagging me behind the eyes for 3 days, a persistent throb that aspirin could not touch. I walked out to the parking garage, the concrete echoing with the sound of my dress shoes. My car, a dark gray sedan I had bought 6 months prior, was parked in the corner spot, away from the other vehicles to avoid door dings. It is a vanity, I know, but I take care of my things. As I approached the car, I dropped my keys. They skittered across the concrete and slid under the rear bumper. I sighed, the headache pulsing, and knelt down on the cold asphalt to retrieve them. I reached under the chassis, my fingers brushing against the plastic molding of the bumper. That was when I felt it. It was not part of the car. I know every inch of that vehicle. I reviewed the specs before I bought it. My fingers grazed a cold, rectangular object that was magnetically attached to the frame, tucked high up where a casual inspection would never find it. It felt foreign. It felt wrong. I pulled my hand back and grabbed my phone, turning on the flashlight. I lay on my back, ignoring the grime on my suit jacket, and shined the light into the crevice. There it was, a black box, roughly the size of a deck of cards, with no branding, no lights, and no switches. It was matte black, designed to disappear in the shadows. I pulled it off. The magnet was powerful. It took real force to dislodge it. I sat there on the garage floor, holding the object in my hand. It was heavy, dense. This was not a cheap Bluetooth tag you buy at an electronics store to find your keys. I have worked on government contracts. I have seen security schematics for embassies. This was a professional-grade GPS tracker with its own long-life power supply and cellular uplink. This was hardware used by private investigators, cartel enforcers, or intelligence agencies. My first instinct was a surge of adrenaline so sharp it made my hands shake. Who was tracking me? My mind raced through a catalog of potential enemies. Was it a rival architecture firm trying to outbid me on the waterfront project? We were neck and neck for a $20 million contract. It seemed plausible. Or was it something more personal? Had I cut someone off in traffic? Was I being targeted for a robbery? I stood up, dusting off my pants, and threw the device onto the passenger seat. I drove home in silence, checking my rearview mirror every 10 seconds. Every pair of headlights behind me looked suspicious. Every car that turned when I turned made my heart hammer against my ribs. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I was drenched in a cold sweat. I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes, just staring at the house. The lights were on. I could see the silhouette of Elena in the kitchen window. She was moving rhythmically, probably chopping vegetables for dinner. It looked so peaceful, so normal. I felt a sudden, fierce protectiveness. I had to keep this away from them. If I told Elena, she would panic. If I told the kids, they would be terrified. I had to handle this. I had to be the man of the house. I took the tracker into my workshop in the garage. I examined it under a magnifying lamp. There was a serial number filed off on the side. This was illegal equipment. I considered taking it to the police, but I hesitated. If this was a serious criminal element, going to the police might trigger them. If they had a live feed on this tracker, they would see it enter a police station. They might retaliate. They might come for my family before the police could file a report. Number 1. I needed to know who they were first. I needed to flush them out. I needed to be smarter than them. I looked around my workshop. My eyes landed on a brass statue of a falcon's head I had brought back from a trip to Dubai years ago. It was hollow at the base, but heavy enough to mimic the weight of a machined part or a valuable antique. An idea formed in my mind. It was impulsive, perhaps reckless, but I was angry. I was violated. I wanted to hit back. I took a roll of industrial-grade duct tape and secured the tracker inside the hollow cavity of the statue. I packed the empty space with foam so it would not rattle. Then I found a sturdy shipping box. I wrapped the statue in layers of bubble wrap and sealed the box with packing tape. I printed a shipping label. I chose a destination at random, or perhaps not entirely at random. We had a satellite office in Tokyo that I had not visited in years. I addressed the package to the generic mailroom of a large office building in the Shinjuku district, care of a made-up name. I paid for express international priority shipping online. It would be there in 24 hours. I drove to the 24-hour courier drop-off center 3 towns over. I did not want to use the local one. I dropped the box in the chute and walked away. The drive back was surreal. I felt lighter, yet heavier. The tracker was gone. If someone was watching a screen right now, they would see the dot moving towards the airport distribution hub. They would think I was traveling. When I entered the house, I put on the mask I had worn for years. The mask of the tired but happy provider. Elena met me in the hallway. She was beautiful, even in her sweatpants. We had been married for 20 years. She was the love of my life, or so I told myself every day. She kissed me on the cheek. "You are late," she said softly. "Dinner is cold." "I am sorry," I said, forcing a smile. "Listen, something came up. The Hawaii resort project. The investors are getting cold feet. I have to fly out tonight to calm them down. It is an emergency." Elena frowned. "Tonight?" "Mark, you look exhausted. Can it not wait until morning?" "If I wait, we lose the contract," I lied. It rolled off my tongue with disturbing ease. "I need to go. I will pack a bag." I went upstairs. Chris's door was open. He was lying on his bed, headphones on, staring at the ceiling. He was a good kid, I thought. Quiet, a bit distant lately, but that is normal for 17. I knocked on the door frame. "Hey," I said, "I have to head to Hawaii for work for a few days. You are the man of the house while I am gone. Look after your mother and sister." He slid the headphones down. "Sure, Dad. Have fun." He did not look at me. He did not ask when I would be back. He just turned back to the ceiling. It stung, but I brushed it off. Teenagers. I went to Mia's room. She was painting at her easel. She was talented, my Mia. She wanted to go to art school in New York. I had already set aside $50,000 for her first year. She turned and smiled at me. That smile always melted me. "Hawaii?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Take me with you." I wish I could, Princess, I said, kissing her forehead. Next time, I will bring you back a shell. I packed a suitcase with clothes I would not wear. I kissed Elena goodbye at the door. I told her I would call when I landed. I got in my car and drove away. But I did not go to the airport. I drove 2 miles down the road, circled back through the side streets, and pulled into the parking lot of the Starlight Motel. It was a dive, a place for truckers and people who did not want to be found. It was directly across the main road from our subdivision. From the second-floor window of room 204, I could see the entrance to my street. I paid cash for the room. I set up my command center on the stained particle board desk. I opened my laptop and logged into the smart home server. Years ago, when we installed the security system, Elena had complained about the internal cameras. She said they felt invasive. I promised her I would disable them. I told her the lenses were shuttered and the microphones were off. I lied. I simply moved the administrative access to a hidden partition on the server. I never used them to spy. I never checked them. I only kept them active as a failsafe, in case of a break-in while we were on vacation. Now, that failsafe was my lifeline. I brought up the feeds, the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, the kids' rooms. The image quality was crystal clear in 4K resolution. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and turned up the audio gain. I felt like a voyeur in my own life. I watched Elena clean the kitchen counters. I watched Chris come downstairs and make a sandwich. I watched Mia watching TV. They looked so normal, so safe. A wave of guilt washed over me. I was paranoid. I was crazy. Some corporate spy had tagged my car, and here I was spying on my family like a creep. I almost closed the laptop. I almost packed up and went home to confess. But I forced myself to wait. The package was on a plane. It was crossing the Pacific. I had to see this through. I barely slept that night. I sat in the chair drinking terrible motel coffee, watching the screen. The sun came up. The family woke up. They ate breakfast. The kids went to school. Elena went to her yoga class. It was agonizingly mundane. The day dragged on. I monitored the tracking number of the package on a separate tab. It landed in Tokyo. It cleared customs. It was out for delivery. It was 7 p.m. our time. The sun had set. The house was illuminated warmly against the dark night. Everyone was home. Elena was reading in the living room. Chris was in his room, gaming. Mia was in her room, lying on her stomach on the bed, scrolling through a tablet. The notification dinged on my laptop. Status, delivered. Signed for by, mailroom. I leaned forward. My heart was pounding. This was it. If the tracker was linked to a competitor, they would be confused. They might call me. They might check the location data and think it was a glitch. I watched the house. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing changed. I started to relax. It was a mistake. It was just a corporate spy. My family was safe. I let out a long breath, rubbing my face. I was an idiot. I had terrified myself for nothing. And then a phone rang. It was not the landline. It was not Elena's iPhone. It was not the expensive Galaxy phone I had just bought for Mia. The sound was coming from Mia's room. It was a sharp electronic trill, a cheap ringtone. I watched on the screen as Mia froze. She did not look confused. She looked annoyed. She rolled off the bed, walked over to her closet, and reached into the pocket of a winter coat hanging in the back. She pulled out a gray flip phone, a burner. My stomach dropped. Why did my 15-year-old daughter have a burner phone? Was she dealing drugs? Was she talking to an older boy? I turned the volume up to maximum on the feed. I could hear the rustle of her clothes. I could hear her breath. She flipped the phone open and pressed it to her ear. Her posture changed instantly. She stood straighter. Her face, usually so expressive and soft, hardened into a mask of stone. Her eyes narrowed. "What?" she said. It was not the voice of my daughter. It was not the voice of the girl who asked for a shell from Hawaii. It was a voice stripped of all innocence. It was low, authoritative, and cold. I listened, my blood turning to ice, as she paused, listening to the person on the other end. "What do you mean the target is in Japan?" she snapped. She began to pace the room, her movements sharp and agitated. "He said he was flying to Hawaii." We watched him leave. "Target." The word hung in the air of the dirty motel room. "You lost him," Mia hissed into the phone. "You are supposed to be the professional. If the tracker is in Japan, he is not there. He is playing games." She stopped pacing and looked directly at the wall, as if she could see through it, as if she could see me watching her. "No," she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "Do not abort. If he is in Japan, he knows. Or he suspects. That makes him dangerous. If he is not in Hawaii, we can't do the plane crash scenario. We have to improvise." She listened again, then nodded. "Proceed to Plan B," she said. "I will tell the others. Get the team ready. We need to liquidate the asset before he changes the will." She snapped the phone shut and threw it onto the bed. She stood there for a moment, taking a deep breath, and then she smiled. But it wasn't her smile. It was a predator's baring of teeth. She turned and walked out of the room. I sat there, frozen, unable to breathe, unable to think. Liquidate the asset. The asset was me. I sat in the dark motel room, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating the dust motes dancing in the stale air. My hands were trembling, not with fear, but with a physiological shock that I could not control. My brain was trying to reject what my ears had just heard. Liquidate the asset. My daughter, Mia, whom I had tucked in every night until she was 12, whom I had taught to drive just last year, had spoken those words with the flat, bureaucratic indifference of an executioner. I watched her walk out of her bedroom on the screen. I fumbled with the mouse, my fingers stiff and clumsy, switching the camera feed to the living room. Downstairs, the scene was aggressively normal. Chris was sprawled on the couch, the television flickering with the lights of a video game. Elena was in the kitchen, the soft clinking of glass against granite audible through the high-gain microphones. Mia descended the stairs. She did not stomp. She did not run. She glided with a predatory grace I had never noticed before. She walked into the living room and stood between the television and the couch. Chris groaned, leaning to the side to see the screen. "Move, Mia. I am in a ranked match." "He knows," Mia said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor blade. Chris paused the game. He set the controller down on the coffee table. He did not look surprised. He did not look horrified. He looked irritated, like someone who had just been told the pizza delivery would be late. "He knows?" Chris asked, looking up at his sister. "How?" "The tracker is in Tokyo," Mia said, crossing her arms. "The contact said the signal went live in Japan. Dad is supposed to be in Hawaii. He found it. He played us." Chris let out a heavy sigh and rubbed his temples. "I told you," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I told you the car accident scenario was too complicated. Too many moving parts. We should have just used the ricin in his protein powder. He drinks that sludge every morning. He would have had a heart attack in his sleep, and we would be done by now." My stomach heaved. I gagged, tasting bile. Ricin. My son, my 17-year-old boy who I had sat with for hours helping him with his calculus homework, had suggested poisoning me. He had a preference for how I should die. Mia shook her head dismissively. "Ricin is risky, Chris. If the autopsy flagged it, we get nothing. We need the double indemnity from the travel insurance and the accidental death rider on his life insurance. A heart attack only pays out the base policy. Do you want $3 million or do you want $10 million? We need clean payouts if we want to leave this country and live properly. 10 million. That was the price tag on my life. I had worked for 30 years to build that wealth, thinking I was securing their future. I was merely fattening myself for the slaughter. Elena walked in from the kitchen. She was holding a glass of red wine. She looked at her children, her face unreadable. "Keep your voices down," she said calmly. "The neighbors have ears." "Mom, the plan is blown," Mia said, turning to her. "He found the tracker. He mailed it to Japan. He knows someone is watching." Elena took a sip of wine. She did not panic. She walked over to the window and peered out through the blinds, looking directly at the street, directly at the motel. I instinctively pulled back from the screen, even though I knew she could not see me. "He is smart," Elena said softly. "Smarter than we gave him credit for. I warned you. Mark is not just a builder. He is an architect. He notices details. If a beam is off by a fraction of an inch, he sees it." We got sloppy. "So what do we do?" Chris asked, standing up. "If he knows, he might go to the police. We need to cut our losses. We should clear the accounts and run." "No," Elena said sharply. She turned back to them, her eyes flashing with a steeliness I had never seen in our 2 decades of marriage. "We do not run. We have worked this job for 18 years. I have spent 18 years sleeping in that man's bed, listening to his boring stories about zoning laws, pretending to laugh at his jokes. I have earned that money. We are not leaving without it." This job. She called our marriage a job. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and stinging. Every memory I held sacred. Our wedding day, the birth of the children, the vacations, the quiet mornings with coffee, was being incinerated in real time. I was not a husband. I was a mark, a long con. Suddenly the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the house and through my speakers. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was it the police? Had the courier company flagged the suspicious package? Elena looked at the digital clock on the cable box. She smiled. Finally, she said. She went to the door. I switched the camera feed to the entryway. She unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open. A man stood on the porch. He was massive. He wore a black leather jacket and dark jeans. His head was shaved, and a jagged scar ran from his ear down to his jawline. He looked like violence incarnate. He was carrying a large, heavy black duffel bag. I had never seen this man before. He was a stranger. I expected my family to recoil. I expected Elena to slam the door. Instead, Elena stepped back and opened the door wider. "You made good time," she said. The man stepped inside, dropping the heavy bag on the floor with a thud. He looked around the hallway, sniffing the air like a wolf entering a new territory. "Is he here?" the man asked. His voice was gravel, deep, and resonating. "No," Elena said. "He is gone. We have a situation." The children ran into the hallway. I watched, my breath caught in my throat, expecting the man to pull a weapon. I reached for my phone, ready to dial 911 to send the police to save my ungrateful, murderous family from this intruder. But then, Chris smiled. It was a genuine smile, wide and bright, the kind of smile I hadn't received from him in 5 years. "Dad!" Chris shouted. He ran to the man. The massive stranger opened his arms and embraced my son, lifting him slightly off the ground. He clapped Chris on the back. "Look at you," the man said. "You got taller? You been hitting the gym like I told you?" "Yeah, Dad. Bench is up to 220. Chris beamed. "Dad!" The word hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I gasped, the air leaving my lungs. Mia pushed past Chris. "My turn," she squealed. She threw her arms around the man's neck. He hugged her tightly, kissing the top of her head. "Hey, sweetie," he murmured. "Did you miss me?" "I missed you so much," Mia said, burying her face in his leather jacket. "Mark is so annoying. He is always trying to bond with me. It is gross." Elena walked up to the man. She placed her hands on his face. He leaned down and they kissed. It was passionate, familiar, and possessive. I sat in the motel room, staring at the screen, my entire world collapsing into dust. The man was not a hitman hired off the dark web. He was their father, their biological father. The math crashed into my head. Chris was 17. Elena and I had been married for 20 years. But we had struggled to conceive. I remembered the fertility treatments. I remembered the doctors telling us I had low motility, but that it wasn't impossible. Then, miraculously, Elena had gotten pregnant. I had been so happy. I had cried. It was all a lie. She had been seeing this man the whole time. They had planted her in my life. They had used me to incubate their family. I had paid for the hospital bills. I had changed the diapers. I had paid for the private schools, the braces, the piano lessons. I had raised another man's children while he waited in the shadows, probably living off the money Elena siphoned from our joint accounts. They moved into the living room. The man, the real dad, sat in my favorite armchair. He put his boots up on my coffee table. "So, the Japan thing," the man said, gesturing for a beer. Elena handed him one. "He found the tracker," Mia explained, sitting on the arm of his chair. "He mailed it away. He is not in Hawaii. He is somewhere else." The man took a long pull of the beer. "Smart," he grunted. "But not smart enough. If he was smart, he would have called the cops immediately. The fact that the cops aren't kicking down the door right now means he is scared. He is hiding. He is trying to figure out what is going on." He looked directly at the camera hidden in the smoke detector. For a second, I thought he saw me. "He is probably watching the house," the man said. "If he accessed the server, he can see us." My blood ran cold. Elena laughed. "He doesn't know how to access the server. I told him it was broken years ago. He can barely work the TV remote." She was wrong. I was an architect. I worked with systems. I just played dumb to make her feel needed. That underestimation was the only thing keeping me alive. The man opened the duffel bag. He pulled out a clear plastic brick filled with white powder. "Well, since the plane crash is off the table, we go to the backup," the man said. "What is that?" Chris asked, eyes wide. "Heroin," the man said. "Pure. Uncut. I brought enough to kill a horse. Since we can't get him to a location, we bring the location to him. When he comes back, and he will come back because he thinks you are his family, we stage an intervention. We tell him we found drugs in his bag. We gaslight him. Then we dose him. We make it look like he spiraled. A respectable architect with a secret addiction. An overdose is accidental death. It pays out." Mia looked at the brick of heroin. "Is it painful?" she asked. The man shrugged. "He won't feel a thing. He will just go to sleep and never wake up. It is a mercy, really. Better than he deserves. Better than I deserve. I, who had given them everything." Chris leaned forward. "When do we do it?" "As soon as he walks through that door," the man said. "We wait. We play the part of the worried family. We call his phone. We leave voicemails begging him to come home. We lure him in." Elena pulled out her phone. "I will start now," she said. "I will leave a crying voicemail. I will say I am worried about his heart." I watched her dial. A moment later, my cell phone, which was sitting on the motel desk, lit up. I stared at the screen. "Incoming call. Elena. Wife." It buzzed and vibrated against the cheap wood of the desk. I did not answer. I let it ring. I looked at the screen. I saw my wife holding the phone to her ear, her face contorted into a fake mask of worry, while the man, her lover, the father of my children, rubbed her back soothingly. I realized then that there was no redemption here. There was no misunderstanding. This was a parasitic infection that had consumed 18 years of my life. If I walked through that door, I was dead. If I tried to fight them legally, they would scatter. The man would disappear. Elena would play the victim. The money would vanish. I needed to end this, tonight. I looked at the screen one last time. I looked at the children I had adored. I tried to find some trace of the babies I had held, but all I saw were strangers. They were clones of the monster sitting in my chair. I reached for the landline hotel phone. I needed to make a call, but not to them. I picked up the receiver and dialed a number I had never hoped to use. I held the receiver of the dirty motel landline against my ear. The plastic felt greasy, but my hand was gripping it so tightly I thought the casing might crack. I did not dial the local police station. I did not want Officer Miller, who coached the Little League team, to be the one to knock on the door. I wanted strangers. I wanted force. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? The operator asked. Her voice was calm, professional, detached. I took a deep breath. I had to sell this. I had to be the terrified neighbor. I need to report a drug distribution center in progress, I said, pitching my voice high and breathless. I am a neighbor. I was walking my dog. I saw a man, a large man with a scar, carry a massive black duffel bag into the house across the street at 42 Oakwood Drive. I paused, letting the silence hang for a split second. He dropped the bag, I continued. It unzipped. I saw bricks, white powder, dozens of them, and he has a gun. I saw a pistol tucked into his waistband. There is a woman and 2 teenagers inside. I think they are bagging it up. Please, I am scared. He looked right at me. Are you in a safe location, sir? The operator asked, her tone shifting instantly from administrative to alert. I am back in my house, lights off, I lied. Please, send everyone. This is not a street deal. This is a cartel shipment. I hung up. I did not wait for follow-up questions. I wiped the receiver with my sleeve, a useless gesture, but one born of habit. I turned back to the screen. Inside the house, the celebration was continuing. Elena was refilling wine glasses. The man, the biological father, was cutting into the brick of heroin with a pocket knife, testing the purity on his tongue like a villain in a cheap movie. Top shelf, he grunted, nodding at Chris. This will put him down fast. No pain, just lights out. Chris looked at the white powder with a mixture of fascination and greed. How much is that bag worth? He asked. Street value? The man laughed. $500,000, easy. But we are not selling it. We are investing it in your future. One scoop of this buys us the $10 million insurance payout. That is the return on investment. Mia was giggling. She was taking selfies with the man, the brick of heroin visible in the background. I wondered if she planned to post them to a private story, bragging about her criminal lineage. I sat there, watching the people I had dedicated my life to. I looked at the walls of the living room I had painted, the mantel I had built, the photos on the wall, photos of a family that never existed. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were already a ghost. I was mourning them, but they were not dead yet. They were just erased. The version of them that I loved had been a fiction. These people on the screen were strangers. Dangerous strangers who wanted me dead. I checked my watch. 4 minutes passed. The man stood up. He walked to the window. Quiet, he hissed. The room went silent. Elena put down her glass. What is it? She whispered. I hear something, the man said. He reached behind his back and pulled out a gun. A Glock. My heart hammered. I had told the police he was armed, but I had been guessing. Seeing the weapon confirmed everything. I had been living with wolves. Sirens, the man said. Suddenly, the street outside exploded with light. I looked out the motel window. It wasn't just a patrol car. It was an armada. 2 armored SWAT trucks screeched to a halt on the lawn, tearing up the grass I paid a landscaping crew to maintain. 4 patrol cars blocked the street on both ends. Blue and red lights strobed against the motel walls, blindingly bright. The man inside the house panicked. He grabbed the duffel bag. "Flush it!" he screamed. "You can't flush 10 kilos!" Elena shrieked, her composure shattering. "Run! Out the back!" I watched on the screen as the man sprinted toward the kitchen, heading for the back door, but as he reached it, he skidded to a stop. Through the kitchen window, I saw the backyard was flooded with floodlights. Officers with rifles were already in position. "Police! Open the door!" The voice came from a megaphone, booming through the neighborhood. "We have the house surrounded. Come out with your hands up." The man ran back into the living room. He looked like a trapped animal. He looked at Elena. He looked at the kids. For a second, I thought he might try to protect them. I thought, perhaps, in his twisted way, he loved them. Instead, he threw the duffel bag at Chris. "Take it," he roared. "Hide it in your room. Tell them it is yours. You are a minor. They won't give you life." Chris stared at him, eyes wide with terror. He didn't move. He didn't touch the bag. "Dad?" Chris whimpered. "Don't call me that," the man shouted. "Move!" Boom! The front door didn't open. It disintegrated. A battering ram smashed through the lock and the wood frame. Flashbangs were tossed inside. I watched on the screen as the living room filled with blinding white light and smoke. The audio feed peaked with a deafening bang, then went to static for a second before stabilizing. Screams. I heard Mia screaming, a high, piercing sound that, under any other circumstances, would have made me run to her aid. Now, it just sounded like consequences. "Get down! Get on the ground! Police!" Uniformed men in tactical gear poured into the hallway like a tide of black water. I saw the man try to raise his gun. It was a suicide move. "Drop it!" He didn't drop it fast enough. A taser prong hit him in the chest. He convulsed and collapsed, thrashing on the hardwood floor. Elena was on her knees, hands behind her head, sobbing. It wasn't a dignified cry. It was an ugly, hysterical wail. "Don't shoot! I didn't do anything! It's him! It's all him!" He broke in! She was turning on him instantly. The loyalty of 18 years evaporated the second the handcuffs came out. I watched the police secure the room. One officer kicked the gun away from the convulsing man. Another officer unzipped the duffel bag that was lying in the middle of the floor. He looked inside, then looked up at his sergeant and nodded. That bag was the nail in the coffin. Possession of that quantity with a firearm in a school zone. The federal sentencing guidelines were draconian. The man was never seeing the light of day again. And Elena? Constructive possession. Conspiracy. She was going down with him. Then the officers moved to the children. I saw an officer grab Chris by the arm. Chris tried to pull away. "I am just a kid," he yelled. "I didn't know." Mia was backed into a corner, shaking. An officer approached her slowly. She looked small. She looked like my little girl. For a fleeting second, my resolve cracked. I wanted to call the station. I wanted to say it was a mistake. I wanted to hire them a lawyer. Then I remembered her voice on the phone. Liquidate the asset. She wasn't scared because she had lost her father. She was scared because she had lost her payday. I watched as they were zip-tied. I watched as they were led out the front door. I moved away from the screen and went to the real window. The neighborhood was awake. Neighbors were standing on their porches in bathrobes, filming with their phones. This would be the talk of the town for decades. The respectable architect's house, a drug den. I watched the procession. First, the man. He was dragged out, unable to walk, foaming at the mouth. They threw him into the back of a van. Then Elena. She was still screaming, pleading with the officers, pointing at the man. She looked old. The makeup had run down her face. The glamour was gone, revealing the desperate grifter underneath. Then Chris. He was crying. He looked at the neighbors, shame burning his face. Finally, Mia. As she was led down the walkway, she stopped. She looked up. Not at the house. Not at the police. She looked directly across the street. She looked at the motel. She couldn't possibly see me. The room was dark. I was behind a curtain. But she stared right at my window. Her face wasn't sad. It was twisted in a rictus of pure hate. She knew. Somewhere in that calculating sociopathic brain of hers, she realized the timing was too perfect. She realized I hadn't gone to Hawaii. She mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I read her lips. I hope you die. An officer nudged her and she broke her gaze, getting into the back of the patrol car. I stood there for a long time watching the flashing lights fade as the convoy drove away. The police remained, taping off the scene, cataloging evidence. My house, my beautiful, custom-built house, was now a crime scene. It would be seized by the state. Asset forfeiture. I would never step foot inside it again. I turned back to the desk. I closed the laptop. I didn't log out. I didn't wipe the drive. I left it there, open. Let the police find it. Let them see the footage. Let them hear the conspiracy to murder. It would only ensure the conviction stuck. I picked up my small suitcase. I had my passport. I had the cash I had withdrawn from the emergency account. I had my car keys. I walked out of the motel room into the cool night air. The smell of ozone and exhaust lingered from the raid. I walked to my car, parked in the shadows of the motel lot. I threw the bag in the passenger seat. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I waited for the grief to hit me. I waited for the breakdown, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow lightness. The weight of the last 18 years, the pressure to provide, the anxiety of parenting, the constant effort to please a wife who never loved me, was gone. It had been violently excised, leaving a scar, yes, but also leaving space. I was 56 years old. I was a good architect. I had money in offshore accounts that Elena didn't know about. I had the whole world. I started the engine. It purred to life. A steady, reliable mechanical heartbeat. I pulled out of the lot. I didn't look at the house. I didn't look at the police tape. I turned right, toward the highway, toward the west. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I rolled down the window. I threw the phone out onto the asphalt. It shattered, the pieces scattering into the dark. I was alive. That was the only victory that mattered. Mark, the father, died in that house tonight. Mark, the husband, died with him. The man driving the car was someone new, and for the first time in 18 years, he was free.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.